Hello, everyone. I hope that you are all well. Today, we are going to review the CSEC English A, May, June 2025, paper 2. And of course, this is going to help you with your preparation for the upcoming May, June 2026 paper 2 exam. Mhm. So let us get right into it. Mhm. As you know, the first section is going to consist of a summary, and you have to read the passage and identify five main points, and then you will have to construct a summary. Sometimes they explicitly tell you to write it in one paragraph, and if they do not explicitly tell you that, you write it in at least two, right? So yeah, I will not. Okay, I'll just read the instructions. Read carefully the following article on how TikTok changed the world. List five main points discussed, then write a summary of the article in not more than 120 words in one paragraph. If this limit is exceeded, only the first 120 words of your answer will be read and assessed. You must include in your summary paragraph the 5 points you listed and any other relevant points. A minimum of 7 points is required in order for you to score full marks. And this is just the criteria, and it's telling you how you will be assessed. All right. So let's look at the article. How TikTok changed the world in 2020. The Chinese-owned platform TikTok joined the likes of WhatsApp, Instagram, and Twitter in the social media diets of many. Despite a multitude of controversies, it popularized short-form video and developed a recommendation algorithm that made it one of the world's strongest video competitors. TikTok became the most downloaded app of the year in 2020. It changed more than just how the world consumes media online. There is no age limit for TikTok. It is more a willingness to hurl yourself into the chaos of the internet. Encountering somebody online that you relate to before following them religiously, DMing them and inundating them with supportive comments and queries whenever they post is distinctly Zoomer or Gen Z culture. Asking questions, supporting worthy initiatives, and mass protesting in an app space is something that comes naturally to these digital natives. A substantial following on TikTok translates to a strange sort of celebrity. The ordinary folk who have become known faces have hastened in a new era of content creator. TikTok may have managed to draft in celebrities like Chef Gordon Ramsay, but users flood the app to see distinctly ordinary and relatable individuals. If Instagram gave us the IG model, TikTok has given us the talented next door neighbor. These characters changed 2020 and could well change the years to come. The promotion of trends on TikTok has gone hand in hand with its creation of the audio meme, the mass reproduction of the same song to all of these magical trends. Sometimes the songs are from well-known artists, some of whom deliberately court TikTokers to try and boost marketing on the platform. But a distinct component of TikTok culture has been the virality of unknown singers and artists who have been lifted from obscurity to views and listens in their millions. YouTube turned many people into content creators through their computers, and now TikTok is turning even more people into content creators via their phones. YouTubers shoot with editing for the platform in mind, but TikTokers with their phones out, often on the go, film and edit in the app and then instantly upload. Well, platforms like Instagram increasingly become arenas where only the biggest brands with their marketing budgets get any screen time at the expense of newer, smaller talent. TikTokers with powerful messages for now are free to run amok. Mhm. Okay, so this is where this was taken from. No, yes. So this is the article one, two, three, four, five. As you see, it comprises five paragraphs. So we have to extract the main points. So what did we extract? So the social media platform TikTok, which is owned by China, became very popular in 2020 due to its short form video and recommendation algorithm. So that's a very important point about TikTok. And it was said at the beginning, this entire paragraph talks about how TikTok became popular. So that is the idea that would emerge from this point, from this paragraph, that 2020 marked the difference. So it became popular in 2020 due to due to this new feature, which is the recommendation algorithm and short form video content. So if you had anything along those lines, you would be correct. Mhm. So you have to mention that TikTok became very popular in 2020. You have to say why. Mhm. Okay, point number two. Gen Z uses this platform to interact with persons with whom they can relate, enabling them to support worthwhile causes. So this goes back to the use of the app, which was mentioned in this second paragraph here, when it talks about the age that there's no age limit and how basically how young people use TikTok. They use it to keep in touch with their or get in contact with people they admire and to support worthwhile causes like initiatives, mass protesting, or you could call that activism. Yeah. So if you had anything along those lines, you would be correct. That would be the point. That would be point number two. Talking about how Gen Z or how the young people use TikTok. Three, due to massive exposure, TikTok content creators have become celebrities as their faces are recognizable from the internet. So this talks about the appeal that TikTok content creators have, right? So this was said in the third paragraph when it talks about a substantial following on TikTok translates to a trained sort of celebrity. So they even mention examples. So that's what you would have to say for your third point, that the a big following on TikTok can basically turn a person into a household name or into a celebrity. Anything along those lines. Mhm. The fourth point, even some famous artists try to capitalize on marketing by trying to work with TikTokers. So this also goes to the popularity of the content creators. So those content creators who amass a big following, they are even approached by famous people or famous artists for like collaborations, right? And this was in the fourth paragraph. Promotion of trends on TikTok has gone hand in hand with its creation, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes the songs are from well-known artists, some of whom deliberately court TikTokers to try and boost marketing on the platform. Yes. So in order to increase marketing, sometimes famous people seek to do collaborations with TikTokers. So once again, this is a follow on from the third point. And then the fifth point is that TikTok's biggest advantages are the convenience it offers as users can record and edit in the app, and the visibility it grants to small content creators, which distinguishes it from other popular social media platforms. Yes, that's very important. That was mentioned in this entire final paragraph talks about that. Talks about the benefits that TikTok provides, benefits that are not offered by other platforms like Instagram and YouTube. So so TikTok, persons can edit and upload in the app, right? And it also gives them visibility. They don't have to amass a big following before they can get views, like on Instagram. And they don't, the playing field is a lot more even because small content creators they're allowed to have visibility. They don't need to have a large following or a large budget. So in that sense, it is a lot, TikTokers have a lot more leverage, right? And it's a bigger advantage. So that was the fifth point. Now, in terms of the summary, it explicitly told us that we had to use one paragraph. So that's exactly what we'll do. We just have to combine the points into a paragraph, and we can add additional information to support our points, right? So here's the summary. So the social media platform TikTok, which is owned by China, became very popular in 2020 due to its short form video and recommendation algorithm. These features made it the most downloaded at that time. So that's additional information I provided. Gen Z use this platform to interact with persons with whom they can relate, enabling them to support worthwhile causes. Due to massive exposure, TikTok content creators have become celebrities as their faces are recognizable from the internet. Even some famous artists try to capitalize on marketing by trying to work with TikTokers. TikTok's biggest advantages are the convenience it offers, given that users can record and edit in the app, and the visibility it gives to small content creators, which distinguishes it from other popular social media platforms. My word count was 123. So that's my summary. All right, moving along. So section B is the exposition section. Um, so this is the following situation. Mr. Braceford, yeah. Mr. Braceford, your next door neighbor is furious with you for allowing your pet dog to enter his backyard garden, resulting in substantial damage to his plants that were close to harvesting. He has refused to talk to you since the incident. Write a letter of apology to him in an attempt to maintain a good relationship. Your letter of apology must include how the damage occurred, what was damaged, and an offer to compensate for the damages. Of course, this is how you will be assessed in, format, selection of relevant and complete information, yada, 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 right? Mhm. So this is the letter. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use the appropriate format. All right. So, if we're writing a letter and we're using the block format, everything appears in the left-hand column as far as the address, right? So I write my address, I have a space, I write the date, and then I write the address of the person to whom I am writing. So I'm writing to Mr. Braceford, so I have given him a first name because Braceford is obviously his surname. So I've given him a first name, Mark Braceford, and he's my neighbor. So I put an address that is very similar to mine, of course. All right. So in a letter, you have to write you have to have a salutation. So, dear Mr. Braceford, dear Mr. Braceford. Okay. Of course, in our introduction, we need to say why we are writing this letter. I'm writing this letter to apologize for the damage caused to your crops. Okay, I immediately stated the purpose. I completely understand your frustration and I am going to explain what happened. So now I am starting to respond to the cues, yes, let's call them cues. So how the damage occurred. Okay. On February 10th, I went to feed my dog who was in my yard at 6 p.m., as I customarily do. But on this occasion, I left the back door and front door open, so he was able to enter and exit the house. Once he saw that the doors were open, he ran towards them. So, I still haven't fully replied to it. I mean, answered it because I'm just building the story, right? So in the second paragraph, I provide more specific details as far as how the damage occurred. I called out for him, but he did not return, so I went to look for him. I did not find him in my garage, so I proceeded to look on the street. Suddenly, I heard him barking, and when I followed the sound, I realized that he was in your backyard garden. Unfortunately, by the time I arrived, the letters had already been destroyed. So clearly, I've mentioned how the incident occurred, how the damage occurred, right? What was the next cue? What was damaged? The letters. So clearly, I responded to the two cues, how the damage occurred and what was damaged. Okay, continuing. To compensate you for the damages, I will send you the exact amount for each lettuce that was damaged. That is my offer. That's the offer that I am making to compensate for the damages. And continuing, therefore, I would like you to send me the total cost of the damaged lettuce. I will also ensure that the doors are always closed so that an incident like this never reoccurs. I am very sorry about what happened, and I hope that we can resolve this matter as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Best regards, Christopher. So, as you see, my letter was structured, or it was broken down into three paragraphs, and I responded to all the cues that were mentioned. How the damage occurred, what was damaged, as well as an offer to compensate for the damages. So remember letter format, the addresses go in the left-hand column. If you're using the block format with semi-block, yours would go in the right-hand corner and the recipient's address would go in the left-hand corner. But block is the easier and more common format. Okay, so everything should go in the left-hand corner. You have your salutation, you have your paragraphs, and then you have your closing. So this is a letter of apology. All right, good. Moving on to section C, the short story. So I chose to address the picture stimulus. I did not do the writing stimulus. So this is where you only see the picture stimulus here because that is the one that I did. So as you see, there is a man and he's holding a young girl. It could be his daughter, it could be a family member. We don't know, but that's up to you to decide what you're going to write based on this picture, okay? So let's see what I wrote. So my story is entitled The Search. Melville was a quiet village apart from the occasional gatherings which were held to celebrate a birthday, anniversary, or newborn. Christopher was a single father who cherished his 4-year-old daughter, Melissa. They moved to Melville 2 years ago after the untimely death of Melissa's mother. They needed a change in environment because their old abode was a constant reminder of the tragedy they had experienced. In Melville, the neighbors took care of Melissa when Christopher had to work long shifts because they enjoyed spending time with Melissa, whom everyone described as an angel, and they knew that Christopher needed support. One day, Christopher had to work a night shift, and he left his daughter with Jessica, a neighbor who was unable to conceive due to a health complication. Jessica was very attached to Melissa. So based on my introduction or my introductory paragraph, we have seen three characters. We have been introduced to three characters: Christopher, Melissa, and Jessica. Mhm. Christopher is the father, Melissa is the daughter, and Jessica is a neighbor, and they reside in Melville. We get some background information about the family. The mom passed away, and that was one of the reasons that they changed locations, and that's the reason why they are in Melville, right? And of course, we we are introduced to Jessica, who's a neighbor, and she could not conceive children. She could not conceive because of a health complication. And this detail is going to be very important later on, right? So we have the setting, we have the characters, main characters established because this is our exposition. This is where you provide the background details of the story. We have an objective, and Christopher's objective is obviously he has to work and he leaves his daughter with this neighbor whom he obviously trusts. But unfortunately, this neighbor has a bit of a this neighbor has a health complication, so she's unable to conceive. And given what is about to happen, that could be very significant. But let's continue reading. Although this was a normal practice, he felt a bit uneasy. He had a premonition about Jessica. She was rambling about her health issue, and this worried Christopher. Despite this, he left his daughter with her and went to work. Christopher was unable to focus on his job because the feeling would not dissipate even though he gave himself affirmations. He decided to call Jessica, but there was no answer. After his fourth attempt, he began to panic as he was sweating profusely and trembling. After contemplating the worst possible scenario, he raced to her house, but when he arrived, no one was there. Christopher immediately called the other neighbors, but no one had seen or heard anything. Okay, so we have our exposition, our background details, and the next thing we need is we need the rising action. Okay, so the objective is that he wants his daughter to be kept while he goes to work, and he does, and he leaves his daughter with Jessica. But there's a problem. The problem is he has a premonition about Jessica. He has a bad feeling about her based on her antics and based on her behavior on the day or on the night in question. Well, yes, on the occasion in question. And we know that that she is unable to conceive. So he has this very uneasy feeling about her, about the whole situation and about her, of course. But he still chooses to ignore it and leave his daughter. So the big problem is when he goes to work, he's unable to reach her. He calls 3 times and he calls 4 times and he does not get through. So now we have to see how he's going to resolve this conflict. He decides to leave work, and when he gets to the house, no one is there. So the search begins. And all of this is always an action and how the tension is being built. Okay. Some neighbors decided to help him because they were deeply troubled by his state. They approached every single person in the village, but it was as if Jessica and Melissa were ghosts because no one saw or heard anything. Sorry. After the initial search yielded nothing, Christopher went to the police the following morning to make a report. He explained the situation to the officers, and naturally he provided them with a description of his daughter. A notice was then issued to the public. 3 days after making the report, he received a call from the station. We have Melissa, but we would like you to confirm, said the officer. Christopher jumped into his car and sped to the station. So we see how the tension is rising, or how the tension is being built. So he goes back to the house, finds out that nobody is home. Even when he asked neighbors if they had seen or heard anything, nobody saw or heard anything. So he began to worry. He went to the police and they issued a notice, right? And he finally and after about 3 days, he gets a call. So this is where we get to the climax. The police say that they have her, but they will let him to come and confirm. Okay? So this is where we get to the climax. Daddy! Screamed Melissa as she saw Christopher bursting through the door. So this is the climactic point, the most dramatic point of the story. It turns out that Jessica had kidnapped Melissa because she wanted her own child, and they were found at another house in the village that none of the other villagers knew about. So this goes back to the interesting fact about Jessica that she could not conceive. So this would hint at her motivations for the kidnapping, right? She wanted a child of her own and she was probably jealous and she really liked Melissa and she wanted her for herself, right? So yes, the fallen action it would be after this dramatic point. So Jessica is she is taken into custody. Um, Jessica was arrested and Christopher returned home with Melissa holding her like there would be no tomorrow. He vowed that he would continue to protect her in life. So our fallen action is going to be Jessica's arrest, because and know that and Melissa is safe. That's the fallen action. And then of course the resolution or conclusion as we call it is that he takes her home and he vows to continue to protect her. Right? But that dramatic point when he sees his daughter at the station, that's going to be our climax. From the time he receives the call up until he actually goes to the station and sees her, that is our climax, our climactic point. So as you see, that is my story. And that consisted of 442 words. The search. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that. All right, section D, the argument. My favorite part. So what is the line of argument? Face-to-face teaching and learning is better than online teaching and learning. Write an argumentative essay giving your views on this statement. Now, for Those of you, well, not for those of you, because this was in the entire world went through this. This should remind you of COVID. So this is a very relatable question. So as I always recommend, write your arguments before you construct the essay. So my arguments, online teaching and learning can be compromised by students and our teachers not being tech savvy. Face-to-face teaching allows teachers to better manage a classroom as they can see their students, which is conducive to a more effective learning environment. And face-to-face environments facilitate better feedback, given that technology can limit the quantity and quality of feedback that can be given. So it is obvious that I agree with the statement, that face-to-face teaching and learning is better. You could disagree, but you must be able to substantiate your your argument, right? All right. You need to have a title. So my title is face-to-face teaching and learning superior to online teaching and learning? Okay. The first thing we need is a hook. Something to grab the attention of our audience. The world underwent changes because of the coronavirus pandemic. Of course. So that's my hook. Now I need to provide background details on the topic. One change was online schooling. Although it was necessary, it posed significant challenges to effective teaching and learning. So those two sentences are, yes, those two sentences represent my background information. Now I need to mention my thesis. I remember our thesis statement is going to be our position on the topic. We state our 3 points. Yeah, we state a short list of our 3 points, and we must agree or disagree with the line of argument. So I agree, and you can see that from my thesis statement. Face-to-face instruction is more ideal because online teaching and learning can be compromised if teachers and our students are unfamiliar with the technology. It allows teachers to better manage the classroom and it facilitates prompt feedback. So you see my three arguments laid out. So firstly, you know my topic sentence with my first argument. Online teaching and learning can be compromised if teachers and our students do not know how to navigate the technology. For our teachers to carry out an effective lesson, they must know how to engage students using software. That is true. This can be challenging for older teachers who may not be comfortable with with technology. Similarly, learning can be negatively impacted if students are not knowledgeable. Mhm. If you're going to conduct an online class, then of course, familiarity and comfort and being comfortable with the technology are important. Secondly, face-to-face instruction enables teachers to better manage a classroom. With online lessons, students can be distracted by their surroundings, and the teacher has no way of knowing if the student is being attentive. That's true. In face-to-face lessons, the teacher has more control of the environment, so he or she can monitor students' focus. That is true. Therefore, face-to-face instruction provides a more ideal learning environment. Who can disagree with that? I mean, for real, who can disagree with that? Mhm. Thirdly, face-to-face instruction allows for better provision of feedback. For hands-on subjects, students will need someone to assist them immediately when they encounter difficulty. Artificial intelligence may not understand the exact problem, so it will not provide useful instructions to the student. Yes, artificial intelligence can be limited in that it may not fully understand the nature of the problem, which is why having someone there with you who can observe and analyze the situation in real time will always be better. Okay? This highlights the importance of having a guide who is physically present with the student. That's right. That's right. Okay, so I come to my conclusion. As you see, with my three arguments, I mention the topic sentence, which is the argument essentially, and then the other three sentences comprise supporting details, basically information to back up my claim or substantiate my claim. So my conclusion overall, face-to-face instruction, of course, you have to restate your thesis in a different order and in different words. Face-to-face instruction fosters better classroom management. It facilitates the provision of instantaneous feedback, and it provides alternative methods of instruction if students and our teachers are not comfortable with technology. So now after I've done that, we have like a summary statement or a statement or a sentence that encapsulates all 3 points, right? Or a sentence that extracts the central message from all 3 points. Face-to-face instruction creates the ideal conditions for both teachers and students. And that's basically the theme here. If you look at all three of my points, that is the theme. That's a central point that face-to-face instruction creates more ideal conditions for both teachers and learners. Okay. Therefore, and then of course I have my concluding remark. Therefore, students and teachers should continue to advocate for it. So that is a recommendation essentially that students and teachers should continue to advocate for face-to-face instruction. Okay, that brings us to the end of this review. I hope that it was useful, and of course, I hope that you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.